Welcome to the Exhaust Notes podcast.
What is good, everyone? Welcome back to the Exhaust Notes Formula One podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast, your favorite Formula One podcaster's favorite podcast, favorite Formula One podcast. Everybody loves this show is basically what we're trying to get. That's the message we're trying to send with it. My name's Nick. I'm with my guys, Rohit and Todd. Talk about cars being held hostage at the racetrack. McLaren is apparently like the Red Bull of
holding everyone else hostage.
Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy weekend for racing. So, how you guys doing?
Was doing fairly okay, and then in the pregame meeting, Toddsy over here dropped a really fun, informative, educational, all of the adjectives you want to hear about a stat. And so, Todd, I'm going to give you the platform. Share your stat because I think that's the best way to get into what we discussed with regards to this race.
Like I used to tee me up to drop a stat when I was like half cooked on my research on it anyway. But yeah, you know what? Fuck it. We'll just say it is truth.
It's an election year, so I'm convinced
That's
as
right.
long as you say anything with confidence, people are going to believe you.
We don't have to have
We're your
facts anymore.
Favorite Formula One podcast. I believe Nick. Why would Nick lie to us? He's the most truthful out of the three of us.
Well, Nick is on a podcast with your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. Shout out Jacques Slade. Anyway,
The Snowman?
yes. Bars. So the stat that I read or heard earlier is that Lando can beat Max in the World Drivers' Championship if he beats him in the race and gets P1, Max gets P2, and Lando gets fastest lap for the next 9 straight.
And how many races are remaining on the calendar?
9 races
So you're
left.
telling me he has to be the greatest driver ever to still beat Max Verstappen?
He's got to do like enough to make a 30 for 30 about him.
What would you call that?
Seriously.
I think, honestly, listeners, I don't know if you can see this. We all have funny names at the start of every episode. If that happens, I do think Todd's come up with the title for his 30 for 30, and it would be called the Papaya Prince.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
100%.
pretty good. Yeah.
Either that or Todd's a big Donald Trump fan. We'll let you guys decide in our reviews.
Could be either. Could be either.
Half of our audience just signed out.
And the habits, they told their friends to join. It's a safe space for liberal snowflakes. Anyway, before we get canceled for obvious reasons, Nick, what happened? Like, because here's the thing. As recent as, I want to say, 5 races ago, I was giving you both a hard time about how McLaren's the new Ferrari and how the strategy keeps shooting them in the foot. And if they had more competent strategy, they might actually push Red Bull. And lo and behold, at least from a constructor's perspective, yeah, I think it's on. I think they've got as good of a shot to win the constructor's title. And since you two are Daniel and Zach of the McLaren Funhouse fan club here, how are you feeling right now in terms of just sheer giddiness?
I mean, I'm willing to bet that McLaren is going to win the Constructors' Championship. Like, I don't even think it's going to be close.
There's not enough burritos in the greater Southern California area to make that man do a double take on.
Exactly. I think the crazy part, so going back to Todd's stat, 9, so that's assuming that Max like has a finish. Like if Max has a DNF, how does that change that stat?
Okay, I'm going to pull up the driver standings quickly.
Because I don't think that Max is going to DNF very many times ever. But I think 9 races, there's a good shot that he DNFs once.
Once, right? That's what my think. So that's another thing that I said in the pregame was that if he DNFs once and Lando wins, I think Lando only has to beat him at like 6 of the races or something like that because of the difference in point swing. So currently Max is 70 points ahead of Lando in the constructors.
Wait. In the drivers.
In the drivers, sorry. In the drivers championship. So technically, and there's what? P1 is 25 points. P2 is 18.
Yeah, so 9
7
races,
points.
7 points. So that's where they're getting it, basically, right? They're saying if he wins and takes the fastest lap, that's 8 points over 9 races. That's 72
points,
72 points, which would just put him ahead. So I actually feel even better now about saying that Lando has a legit shot at winning this thing. Because 72 points, I mean, if Max doesn't finish second a few times and Lando is up front the way, like, that car was so dominant this weekend. 22.9 seconds, I think, was at the gap, right? I don't think we've seen, outside of Max handing everyone those kind of L's over the past 4 years. That's like a crazy, I don't even remember the last time somebody won like that with it when we didn't really think that there was that, when it wasn't expected, I guess is the best way to say it. Because when Max was dominating, you expected him to win by 30 seconds or a minute, But I don't think anybody else has been at that level in a long time. And for that to be the first race back from summer break and have, I mean, Lando rubbed it in basically on the team radio when he was like, yeah, whatever, I'll catch him. Right? It's just nuts.
When they're talking about the safety car strategy?
Yeah.
Just in case we get a safety car, we'll put you on a soft and you'll just catch him anyway. Well, actually, Lando kind of made fun of that. I will give him credit for. It's kind of presumptuous, no? Or he said something super British, but he was really funny about that, kind of saying yeah, I guess I'll probably catch him, but you guys sounded pretty bold about it. Anyway, it was almost Max boring out front levels of domination today, and it was the only way it could have gotten better is if Oscar was up there fighting Max for P2.
So that's my question. What happened to Oscar? He was literally within DRS of Charles Leclerc for 4 laps, and then all of a sudden it was nothing. And then he never challenged anything again the rest of the race.
I mean, the tire delta was there, and he should have had it. But we talked about that. Oscar's still relatively fresh, I think, and he still has some struggles with race pace. He had one part of the end of the first stint was really fast for him when he got in clear air, and he put in a bunch of fast laps. But he still has small challenges with race pace on the car. So I think he'll get there. He's just not there yet.
But it's not something we're worried because to your point, this is his first competitive year. No, sorry, second competitive year.
Yeah.
Second.
And first, maybe 6th race with a competitive car.
True. I mean, I think that's the thing. One of my hot takes for this episode is I do have a feeling that he's going to be, in a sense, the new Carlos Sainz, where I think once he does get that race experience and that guile, he's going to be one of those guys that could easily just see, you know what, he's just always going to put his head down and be stoic, like we've talked about, be quiet, but also be dominant in a weird way that I think would be ideal if you ever need a 1B type of driver for a Formula One team.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to what we were saying a couple episodes ago where I was asking, do you want 2 dominant drivers? Because this is we're about to see it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see it this year, but I think
year, yeah.
Going into next, when they have a full off season with a good car, going development in the next year, I'm really excited. I think we could have a McLaren double, as they say. They don't say that, but sounds cool.
But do they?
Okay, one last McLaren thing that I want to talk about before we talk about Haas being held hostage by the Russian oligarchs. I don't know if there's more of a like stamp of like I have the best car on the circuit today than Lando asking who has the fastest lap and what it is. The team responding and saying it's 113's fresh soft tires. And then him proceeding to wait 2 laps to the last lap and then taking the fastest lap on old ass tires. Like that was like the most amazing. I saw that pop up the last second. I'm like, this guy is like I feel like he just like unlocked superpowers for himself this race.
X-Men First Class.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Okay. Well, maybe this analogy won't hit then for Toddsley. But there's that scene where I think it's Banshee and he discovers that he can fly. And there's probably one of the more inspiring pieces of orchestral instrumental music. I feel like that's what's going on right now in Lando's mind. Juxtaposed with a beautiful mind, John Nash, where he just sees all the numbers. He's like, aha, this makes sense for me. And I always thought one of his best nicknames that really never really gained steam for me was the last lap Lando, because he had a habit of always kind of doing something spectacular, something unique on that last lap. I think we have to bring back L Cubed.
L Cubed.
Yes. That I agree with. Yes. We could debate the X-Men First Class at another time. I don't think they were like he was given enough credit for that, because like granted he's outside or he's out front by 20 seconds, 20 plus seconds. But for him to even be thinking about like the fastest lap on like 20 or 30 lap old hards.
Oh, 30 plus, right?
Yeah, I don't remember when his.
I think he pitted like 28 or something, 29 out of 77, right? Like
maybe, yeah.
Those tires are, yeah. That was
somehow he kept getting faster on those tires, and then like he was taking even before that, before they even had that conversation, he was taking like super big risks on the curbs and like like cutting corners and really attacking the track just to like put it on like his stamp of domination on the day. And then for him to even be thinking like, yeah, let's try fastest lap. And it felt very much like Valtteri's fastest lap from a few years back in Zandvoort when they told him like, okay, back off Valtteri, and then
he still hit it. Yeah.
Oh my God, like that was amazing
because he let off. Valtteri, they basically. So if you hadn't seen that, I forget how long ago that was. 4 years.
Something
basically,
like that, yeah.
Basically, he's like gonna go for fastest lap. Then they're like, no, don't go for fastest lap. So like, I don't know, a third of the way, halfway through, they're telling him to back off, and he actually backed off. But still, he was so fast in the first 2/3
of the lap.
Yeah, 2/3 of the lap that he still like took the fastest lap. That was nuts.
Yeah.
I just wish there was some AI capability that takes the same tone and inflection that Toto Wolff had about Michael, and to be like, no, Valtteri, no.
That'd be amazing.
I mean, I'm honestly surprised that McLaren was like, yeah, go for it, because like he's basically locked into a win with however many laps, 20 seconds out. He could blow a tire like Hamilton did at Silverstone. What was that, 2019 or whatever, and he still won on 3 tires.
That just shows how confident a team is, and confidence is contagious. And it's just the old analogy is you just need to see one go in, and you're like, anything is possible. And that's currently what they're feeling like. They are on a heater, as the kids say. I don't think they can do anything wrong until they hear this episode, and then I jinx them, and then there goes Lando's title charge. But right now, top to bottom, this is as good of a team as I've seen in the Mercedes Red Bull era that's not Mercedes or Red
Bull. We'll push back on that a little bit, though, because I think they kind of screwed up Oscar's strategy a little bit today. I don't think they necessarily botched it, but instead of boxing him out of into clean air like they did with Charles, which turned out to be the right move and gave him the undercut, which allowed him to beat Oscar in the first place. I think they kind of left him out to dry a little bit when everybody else around him had boxed, and then they just left him out there. Granted, he had a huge tire differential for like maybe 10 laps or something, which should have given him the pace to come back at Charles, but his strength is definitely not fighting through traffic at this point in his career. So,
what is a pushback to a pushback? Like a pull forward?
Yes.
Thank you. Physics was never a strong suit for your boy.
It's literally those. It's a push. It's those like pull and go cars. It's the pushback, and then it zooms forward. You know, the little like toy cars.
Yeah. My kid's got a bunch of those.
Perfect. Now, I would just say this. I agree with you, but then as long as I've watched Formula One, I would almost make the characteristic of this particular era that this is the era of the single car Formula One team, where it's like if you have one dominant car, as we've talked about with Valtteri and Lewis, and we've talked about with Max and Checo, if you've got one car that can take you to the promised land of both a driver's and a constructor's title, then it'd be nice if you get something out of that second car. So I think it's par for the course if we're comparing Oscar's strategy to what McLaren would do for young Lando.
Well, so Todd, let me ask you, because I think Crofty or Martin Brundle said something about like McLaren could have stacked both of them on that same lap, right? And it would have been more clean air for both of them than it turned out to be for Oscar. Were you watching, or did you see any of that?
You know what? I mean, obviously I was watching, but I didn't. I listened to the F1 commentators today. I'm not even sure why. Maybe just because I was on my phone instead of on a TV like I normally am. But no, I didn't hear them talk about it. That is interesting though. Like, why wouldn't they put them, like, stack them if they had the space? He still had a 4 or 5 second gap at least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I wonder too, like, going back to what you said about, you know, like even giving Lando a chance at that fastest lap. I honestly wonder if the team even had a choice once they told him what it was. If Lando was just like, "Hey, I'm out here, I'm getting it." Because to your point, like the way he was driving, there was a couple of close-up shots where, like, you know, he's 10, 12 seconds out in front. And he's literally like pushing the car, locking up into the hairpin. Yeah. Yeah. It was just like, okay, this guy is like he's trying to prove a point today. But I think that's also, it's such a tough situation for the teams, right? Because, man, you mess something up when you double stack in the pits, it becomes problematic for both drivers, right? You mess something up. You know, let's say, you know, Oscar comes in with Lando and Lando is, you know, let's say Lando has a 4.1 second stop. That totally throws off Oscar's stop, right? Which becomes more of an issue for the drivers down the road, I think, by doing that, which is, so I am kind of against that strategy. I mean, I know that people do that all the time, but I feel like that is like the riskiest strategy of all, right? Like you're potentially just like dividing your drivers based on all the people that have to get things right in a pit stop. It's a lot of trust you'd have to have, and I don't know if I'd have that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the team is like firing on all cylinders. You know, there was like I think they did a 3.1 second stop, and I was kind of like laughing to myself, thinking like they should like, that's a slow stop for McLaren at this point. You know, it's just crazy.
Low by like a second.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like low twos average. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the Zach Brown very much felt like he was like the cock of the walk after the race. He was like strutting for sure.
Speaking of, so, what are we thinking for his second tattoo now that Lando's got a podium again?
Wait, was that a bet?
I thought it was a bet that not even a podium. Sorry, like every race win or the first race win, he said he would get a tattoo for Lando. Now he's got.
I don't know if they made another
30.
bet. I mean, it might as well be a tramp stamp at this point.
That's what I was thinking. Still
LN4.
Yeah.
Yes. Just right above the belt line. Oh man.
So you know what we need to do? We need to have Zach Brown on the podcast, and then if Lando, like, it can be something absurd, but we'll discuss with him on the podcast. But if like Lando wins like 3 in a row or 2 titles, something crazy like that, then we all get matching tattoos somehow. I'm not gonna get a tramp stamp, but
so you guys do you. I will gladly.
I will 100% if the situation arises where I'm getting a matching tattoo as Zach Brown. I will 100% get the McLaren swoosh, for lack of a better term, whatever. I don't know what it's actually called. Check mark as a tramp stamp.
It's called papaya rind.
Papaya rind. I will get that as a tramp stamp, 100%.
Is rind exclusive to fruit?
I don't know.
That's a great question.
This is why people come to us. They talk about your favorite Formula One podcast, but really, we're your favorite roaster's favorite podcast about Formula One.
All right, let's talk about Haas.
Wait, no, let's talk about the race. We still have stuff. I felt like the driver of the day and somehow got out of their own way this weekend was Ferrari. They were nowhere all weekend. I don't know if you guys watched FP1, FP2. It was rough. They were not fast in qualifying either. And then come race day, they both executed good strategy, good pit stops. And Chuck had a fantastic drive. Went from like P7, I think he started, up to P3. That's granted, like they took a chance. They went for the undercut. They boxed super early. They boxed before any of the rest of the top group. And then he drove himself to P3 and kept the fastest car on paper behind him for 30 laps or whatever.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
They did a great job.
I can't say anything about my boy Chuck, and I'd love to find a reason to take a pot shot at him. He is essentially the LeBron James to my Skip Bayless, but no, kudos to you, Chuck.
No, he's not your boy, Chili. But, I
mean, even Carlos, to your point, like the whole team Carlos had a great race too, right? Like he was just, I mean, he's a couple, what he finished 6th, I think, but like
7th. But my favorite thing was I saw a headline on ESPN.
5th.
Formula One vertical. Honk honk. Are you topping the field?
Oh, I'm saying 5th. He finished 5th.
Apologies.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask me, are they built for speed or are they built for comfort?
Always go speed.
Always good to know. It is a Formula One podcast, listener. My favorite headline was both Hamilton and Russell saying, like, we didn't expect Ferrari to be that good, but lo and behold, they were that good. So now I do get to put on my Skip Bayless hat. Do you think Ferrari might regret going for Hamilton now, based on how competent both these drives have been for Ferrari for the last couple of races, it seems?
I don't think so.
No.
So the reason why I say that is because I actually think this is kind of like the Lando situation, right? Lando had the weight of winning on his shoulders for so long. And then it was like, shit, Oscar might be a better driver. The instant Lando won, people started talking about it. So then it was like another weight of like, okay, well, you obviously can't do well from pole. So like there's all these things that are weighing on him. And this race was him like finally getting past that. So I think like he's going to be more dominant moving forward. I think Carlos Sainz is like, I'm set for next year. I don't have to worry about it because as we talked about in a previous show, it was getting to the point where like he's running out of seats, man. Like if you don't pick a seat and say you're going to go, you might not be in Formula One next year, which would be crazy to think because I think we would all agree. And I think most of the world would agree that Carlos Sainz is probably a top 5, top 7 driver of all motorsports right now. You know, he's like a very great driver. And I think that is really just like the weight of him having all of the off-track stuff done and like set. I think this is why, you know, this is why situations where you have like with Lewis and Mercedes, I think there's an element to that that's never talked about, where Lewis was with Mercedes for so long. Yes, he said, okay, I'm not going to sign because I'm going to get a better deal at the end of this year. But I think they all agreed that he was still going to sign with Mercedes multiple times, you know, rather than doing like an 8-year or whatever deal with Mercedes. It's like a 2-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 1-year deal, a 1-year deal, that kind of thing. And I think that having that as like a baseline to your mental, you know, well-being in Formula One is a really powerful thing. I actually think this is something that we talked about with, I forget who Todd brought it up, but basically, you know, once somebody knows that they have the seat, so to speak, then they start to perform better. That's also why these guys that run at the bottom of the field, Logan Sargent, right? Like, I don't think that Logan Sargent, you know, I think he's hit or miss of like being like an actual top 20 Formula One driver right now. But if he was given a seat and said, you've got this for 3 years, don't fuck it up, buddy, you're probably going to see him push up into like the 12, 13, 14 spot every once in a while versus kind of, you know, always being in that like last 3, 4, 5 positions. That's at least how I feel about it.
That makes a lot of logical sense, right? Because the whole point of your existence as a race car driver is to have a seat. And once that weight is off your shoulders, you're playing with house money. And there's probably no greater feeling than playing with house money, especially in a competitive high-stakes game like Formula One racing.
Or they give you an extra half season, and then you crash your car so badly that it almost doesn't make qualifying. Logan Sargent.
But guys, if I can, he's been doing pretty. I'm ready to promote him to Logan Corporal.
Like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I hope that shows up on the video. The best thing that I can say about the Hamilton Ferrari thing is I don't think they're regretting, because they signed an 8-time world champion that Max confirmed this weekend. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But like, they signed the best driver of all time statistically to the Scuderia, and they have him forever, like until 2035 or whatever the deal works out to, as an ambassador. So like, he gets a whole bag of narcissism, and so does Ferrari, and everybody's happy. Even if they don't win a World Drivers' Championship while he's there, they have him as their, like,
Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah, Bobby Bonilla. Wow, that's deep cut. Deep cut. Forever, like for the next, you know, until I'm dead, basically. So,
I mean, and he is going to sell Ferraris, right? Like, we all pre-ordered our Ferraris for 2026 just because Lewis signed with Ferrari, right? So
mine just happens to be 1/35th scale. It's this big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm just going to get a Hot Wheels.
I got the Ferraris at Fords, and I got a Festiva on the low.
Dope. There's one other thing I wanted to give a shout out to Pierre Gasly. He had a great drive too, and somehow dragged that Alpine into the top 10, and then back into the top 10 after the second into the second stint, I should say. Had an absolutely awesome drive from start to finish with him, and you know, my boy Danny Rick didn't do too bad either. He had a competent weekend, I will say. Not amazing.
Speaking of Alpine, we also now know one other seat that's been spoken for. Jack Doohan, like most of us have predicted, and most of us have not mispronounced his name like I just did, will be taking that second seat at Alpine for next year. How are we feeling about that?
Funny that we just talked about, like, knowing in the back of your head that you have the seat. is like gives you a different kind of swagger or confidence or whatever. He was the driver announcer for the F1 pre-race and post-race shows this weekend, and he's been there a lot, and he's actually really good as like a commentator. He had like a different level of swagger this weekend, which was pretty funny. He was very confident in the post-race show.
Yeah. I do think he's a great commentator. Like, I hope that he's honestly after his driving career is around, I feel like he's probably the best of the drivers that they've pulled in to like contribute on the commentating.
One other wrinkle for me now next year to further the rivalry between Esteban and Pierre, as now we're going to call him, is now we can also judge them on how good are they as team leaders, because both of them will have first-time drivers on the grid as teammates, and it's going to be very interesting to see who is the better mentee or the mentor to these mentees that are about to join their respective squads.
I can give you that answer now because
are we doing this right now? Okay, let's make this bet.
Is an asshole.
Let's make this bet. I'm ready.
He's going to run into his teammates. I'll make that bet. I'll make that bet.
Duhan, you're right. He is going to run in the back of his
Esteban Ocon is going to run into Ollie Behrman 1,000% next season.
But from behind? Do you want to call your shot like Babe Ruth and say, not only am I going to hit this home run, I'm going to hit it in this general direction?
Will there be points? Will there be penalty points?
No. I will say that it will be Esteban's fault, and they are going to collide somehow next season. That's the bet.
I will take that, and then I will also say that Ollie Behrman will double up Jack Doohan's point total next year.
Ooh, that's. I don't know if I.
But you think?
I think Ollie's going to double up Jack.
Double Jack. Okay. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I will take that action as well. The Alpine car has gotten significantly better the second half of the year.
One race.
No, it's been pretty solid.
It's been, 3 or 4 races since they did upgrades?
On that Deadpool's coming out again, so he can really let his nerd flag fly. Because I'm convinced that's the only reason he did really well that particular race. Is he's a big Marvel fanboy, and you know what? It's happy to see the MCU be competent again.
Is there anybody in the MCU that looks like a rat? That was a rhetorical question.
That looks like a rat. Your boy from Civil
Master
War.
Splinter?
From Civil War.
Baron Zemo, like Daniel Bruhl.
Oh, he did look like a rat. He could, yeah.
You know why I say he looks like a rat? Because in the movie Rush, where he was playing Niki Lauda, they said he looked like a rat. So it's really full circle.
Full circle. And it's still F1 related. Good stuff.
This is why I'm your favorite Formula One podcaster's favorite Formula One podcaster.
Exactly.
You are my favorite Formula One podcaster by far.
Mine too.
You're my favorite.
I think that's it about this race.
Okay, one more race note. Now that we've opened up this can of worms, the rest of the backfield, midfield. It was interesting that Lewis started 12th or 13th, right? Finished 7th or 8th.
Yep.
And almost nobody talked about it. That's a pretty solid move up for Zandvoort, right?
I think the most startling thing about Zandvoort is the fact that Max didn't win in his home race.
Yeah, I mean, how long has it been? I feel like he wins every year there.
Well, since it came back, he's won every year. So if you remember, they only brought Zandvoort back 4 years ago. So three races ago, basically. So he'd won all 3 previous Zandvoort races.
Also, the whatever the gimbal view of the track is amazing. Like, I want to go to that race now after seeing that again. Like,
the McLaren had it. The McLaren's had it. It's the gyro cam.
The gyro cam, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, you don't really realize. I mean, you see it, but you don't really realize how much the track changes tilts. Like both elevation and the tilt, right? until
to
like
know.
watching it that way.
Just to see how it feels.
Just a tip.
Yeah.
The tilt.
Okay.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Todd.
Come on.
I heard what I heard.
More like the papaya popper with that last turn of phrase, sir.
Well, the first idea I had was the papaya penis. But I was like, wait, no, orange dick. There was another note now that fucking what Nick mentioned.
Lewis?
Can't remember what
Russell?
it was. Yeah,
Alonso got points. A point, I should say.
Yeah, they had a decent race. Lewis almost caught George, and I don't think that was talked about enough.
Yeah,
he was on a tear. He was 20 seconds behind him, and then he finished 5 seconds behind him or something.
But he was within 2 or 3 at one point. Like he backed off the last couple of laps, right?
And probably his tires were dead or whatever, but that was awesome. Okay, we'll talk about the Haas thing in a second. But during the course of the weekend, Max was being interviewed and talking. I don't know what, somehow it was Lewis was in the conversation because of course they always try to get him to talk about Lewis and drum up some crap, right? Basically, he called him an 8-time world champion, and then the guy corrected him. He's like, "Don't you mean 7?" And he said, "Well, if the rules were followed, 8-time world champion." So, like, I hope that puts it to bed forever.
Jesus.
Like, I hope nobody ever tries to, like, poke, right? Like, I don't know if Max, like, means that or was just trying to, like, be amicable and, like, shut it down or whatever. But he's, like, no, he meant it in a very sincere way. It didn't sound snarky at all. Like, at least that's the way I took it. I didn't think he was being sarcastic or...
I feel like Trevor and Aaron are both triggered right now as we record this, even though we're not, like, there's, like, the universe is triggered, like, they're triggered from us having this conversation because they're so tired of it.
Going off
and yeah,
right
the
now.
spidey senses are just...
Honestly, I was thinking more like the Hardley boys, and they have a raging clue about what's going on and what's being said. But speaking of Max Verstappen news bites, what do you guys make of the comment that he said around the fact that he feels he's closer to the end than he is the start of his Formula One journey? Because somebody did ask him that as well.
200 races thing, yeah.
That's
I don't believe
races,
him.
as in race cars and not 200 races that might be members of the Max Verstappen Orange Army.
There's probably 200 of them there this weekend. I don't believe him, for one, because they're doing 24, 25 races a year now. That's only 4 years to be 300. I could see him racing another 8 years.
Least. Yeah, at least.
He's 25, 26? How old is he? 25?
25, I think.
And he's like he races other races during the race weekends. Like, that's what he does. That's what Max is. He's a racist.
He's 26.
I had to do it.
He'll be 27 in September.
I could easily see him racing until he's 32, 33.
He's not going to pull Fernando Alonso and go till he's 40.
I think he could.
Yeah, he could do 600 races probably.
Which I should save this next analogy for our comparisons show that we keep talking about. But Fernando Alonso reminds me of the dude that's at your local mall who has the sunglass kiosk or that skincare kiosk, that he's just literally doing this for the love of the game, which is entrepreneurship or racing. And then also because he may have accumulated some debts that he doesn't want to feel comfortable talking about in public. Todd's frozen with anger.
Sorry. I was looking up our next topic.
Sounds a little bit like another goat from another sport.
Hostage.
Unpaid debts? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of segue could you work with on that, Todd?
Well, there is one.
Ring to rule.
Haas is being held hostage in Zandvoort. So, Daddy Mazepin. This is actually pretty smart. I'm not gonna lie. Daddy Mazepin filed some court proceedings in the Netherlands, which basically means that. So Harkening back to what actually happened. Russia invaded Ukraine. Mazepin's kind of a shithead. They said, "Oh, this is an easy way to get out of both things, right?" So they cancel their contract with Uralkali, whatever, Uralkali, however you say it. And they fired Mazepin. Apparently, Uralkali had already given Haas $9 or $10 million at the start of the season, and they've been trying to get their money back ever since.
I think it was actually like 13, and they had gotten a certain amount back, or a certain amount was like basically considered good because of how many races they had or whatever. There was some like we took some of it off. It came down to $9 million though, basically, right? Over this weekend.
Yep. So Daddy Mazepin filed some court proceedings, and now the police show up to the racetrack, and basically Haas isn't allowed to leave the racetrack until they pay $9 million. And they have a race in a week, so they need those cars on the way already. And it sounds like, by all reports, that they are going to pay it.
It seemed like they were intending to.
Looks like Gunther got just in the right amount of time.
Oh, so that's actually an interesting point to this. Gunther, somebody, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name that is running, that's team principal over there at Haas now. But he basically said something along the lines of, if you went from 2019, even if you count the years from the pandemic, if you went from 2019 to 2023 and you didn't make improvements, then you're obviously just pointing the fingers and not doing the work. And Gunther replied, and I forget the words that he used, but basically he was like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Wait, who posed that question to Gunther?
So it was actually a statement so the team principal of Haas right now, forget his name, was asked about like the trajectory of the team over the past 5 years, to which he said, at some point you have to look at it and say the pandemic is going to cause some loss, but from 2019 to 2023 we didn't progress as a team. So the person basically implying that Gunther is pointing fingers at everybody else when it's his responsibility that they didn't improve the team over those years. And Gunther obviously saw the interview and made comments about it. I forget where it was at, and I probably wouldn't be able to find it because I think it was on Threads, but just an interesting kind of like zinger. Like my first thought was like, why is the current team principal taking like, why would you even bring up the old stuff on one hand, and then on the other is like, I feel like Gunther is, like, there's probably some truth to it, right? There has to be, right? If but like Gunther's statement on all of that and like, position on all of it was Gene Haas just didn't want to spend money to grow the team, which that makes me think that obviously if he's trying to still not pay this, because the thing about this Russian thing where the team is having to pay this $9 million, this is something that's already been to court and it was decided that the team has to pay it, right? The genius thing from Mazepin is that he went to the courts there and basically said, like taking it into the courts in that country, basically actually put Haas on the spot to make that money transfer. Where like before, I forget what country the court decision was made in, but like there's no real forcing the issue, right? Like it's just wild that I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's just wild that you would have to play those games. But then again, it's Formula One, and like, there's all sorts of crazy, shady gray areas with the money in this sport.
Yeah, that's. I just can't think. Like, has there ever been another instance in Formula One? I can't think of any off the top of my head where like police were waiting for a team or a driver saying like, you can't leave the track. I'm sure there has been something similar in that, but like, that's pretty wild to me. Like literally holding their cars hostage.
Yeah.
I feel like if they haven't already, there should be a plot point in that upcoming Formula One movie with Brad Pitt. Like, just try to figure this plot line into that movie.
That would be pretty good.
Well, so
Yeah.
I think the other thing I would have loved to seen Haas, especially with Mick Schumacher and Gunther. That was my favorite like era of Haas. But at some point, when the craziness of money and sponsors continues to happen with the team, let's not forget that Rich Energy was a title sponsor for Haas before they decided to not pay. Like, Haas is the common denominator in all of this, right? Like, there's plenty of teams that don't have like as crazy of issues with sponsors or any of these things. And I know that the war in Ukraine is, Russia invading Ukraine is a very serious, turning point in this relationship between these two groups or whatever. But it still just seems like the common denominator to me is Haas. Like, I don't know how, like, I just can't get that out of my head after seeing this again.
Nick, I think it's a fair point. But then the other thing is, we've always kind of laughed at Haas because, I mean, going back to it, we famously compared them and Gunter Steiner to Michael Scott and Dunder Mifflin, right? Like, you've got this larger-than-life, charismatic, megalomaniac, lovable idiot who's leading this ragtag group of drivers and engineers to places where you wouldn't necessarily think they would achieve. But now, with Steiner leaving, we all kind of said the same thing, which was there's kind of a professional competency there that we previously didn't see it, and they've been very quiet. They've been very much heads down. And I would say this season's been a bit of a success for Haas because of the fact that they've been able to put themselves in places, once again, we never thought possible. And lo and behold, they didn't need that charismatic, megalomaniac, dumbass of a manager, in a sense, of Gunter Steiner to lead them there. Now, that being said, is this a symptom of the fact that the impression I always got was Gene Haas is very hands-off with this team, and he always let his principal kind of dictate the terms of engagement for them as an entity? And lo and behold, like, to your point, there's no longer the Gunter Steiner narrative that we can lazily lean upon and say, oh, this is just Gunter being Gunter. This seems to be something largely more CEO Gene Haas related, if I could say that.
Any thoughts, Todd?
Yeah, no, I was just actually checking where Haas was in the constructors, which if you would have told me last year or in a previous year with Gunther at the helm that they'd be in 7th place fighting for 6th, I would have been like, nah, you lying.
You're saying Alpine wrong.
Yeah, they have like triple the points of Alpine almost. That's crazy. Alpine's a constructor, and they're only 8 points off of Team Arby's. So it's very possible. Actually, Magnussen finished 11th today. He was just outside of the top 10.
Also,
very possible they could catch 6th.
I just pulled this up, and I don't want to call Todd out too obviously, but Todd said that they have almost triple the points of Alpine. Haas has 27 points and Alpine has 13. That's barely double.
Yeah, well, I can't math, so it's not like I deal with literally billions of dollars of loans at work every day either. Shout out Dalton. Yep, that's what I do. So, yeah, triple. It's almost crazy. Triple.
Yeah, a double, a triple,
double plus one.
We got a whole value meal going on today.
Yep, 3x3. I'm hungry. I mean, I think we hit all the things. I have no other news points from this race.
What do you think the actual outcome of this Haas Uralkali situation will be. Like, will they get the cars out? Will they be in Italy on Saturday? Or, I mean, they need to be there like Wednesday or Thursday.
The thing that's crazy to me is, like, I could actually see them not getting there on time, or even, like, maybe getting there on Thursday and just barely making it for Friday free practices because Gene Haas is going to, like, try to finagle something and not pay. And, like, I can honestly see that happening just because he seems like, so, according to Gunther, cheap about everything. Apparently their hospitality is also super shit. Just like everything about that team is super low brow. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're racing on in Italy next week.
Has there ever been a team? Has there ever been a time in Formula One, I can't think of any, that where a team didn't show up?
There has to be. There has to be. I couldn't think of one off the top of my head either, but
I was also going to mention this. Formula One, especially the teams, will always have celebrities at their respective paddock stations. I can never think of any celebrity that Haas has brought into the fold.
Yeah, nobody comes to mind.
Like, you know what? I mean, here you go. If there's any joke writers out there, like, come up with your star-studded lineup of Haas attendees, and I could be like Carrot Top, the My Pillow guy, the Hawk Tua. She's got Haas written all over her.
Hawk Tua guy. Did you say the My Pillow guy?
Yeah,
that's such a random reference. I'm surprised he's not a sponsor. Actually,
I'll give it time. I mean, they only need one more to affect the holy to enter the holy trifecta of questionable sponsors.
Sure.
I'm actually wondering, like, granted they're having a much better year, but without Gunther and being in the limelight for being like the kind of like fun-loving,
holy shit
team. Sorry, what, Nick?
So I just randomly, sorry to cut you off. I just randomly searched Haas Celebrity F1 to see if anything popped up. The first story that comes up is from the Daily Express. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney were turned down by Haas as investors before they invested in Alpine.
I didn't know that.
Like, that kind of confirms the shittiness of Gene Haas running the team, right? I mean, we know how much, like, to your point, you know, Deadpool, Wolverine, that kind of stuff goes so far in bringing fans to the team. And if they had the opportunity to have those guys as investors, when clearly they could have seen the success of Wrexham on the football side and the success of that show, I mean, like, Ryan Reynolds to me is like next level successful human being because everything he touches seems to work. But like, if that's actually true and Haas turned them down before they invested in Alpine, like, Haas has just got to go. Like, just sell the team to Andretti or something.
Well, maybe that's
I wouldn't kick him out of bed either.
I was just gonna say maybe that's the curse of being a carnal lover of Todd Yates.
Yep.
More likely to get kicked into bed than you are kicked out of bed.
My wife doesn't think so.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't. I'm wondering if he just didn't want to give up that much of a stake. I was surprised that Alpine gave up as big of a stake as they did.
Yeah, but all we've always heard about was Gene Haas is looking for a viable, plausible buyer so he can get out. Because the impression we always got, and granted, the only thing we have as a point of reference is Drive to Survive, there's the obligatory mention of that series, was the fact that he never wanted to pay the money to Gunther to stay relevant and stay competitive in Formula One. To Nick's point, you've got arguably the truest sense of an angel investor in terms of the halo that's around Ryan Reynolds, and you don't want to take that up. Not only that, not to get too geopolitical, like, keep that shit in North America. Why did you let him go to France and get the most French team when you could have been USA?
Yeah.
all the way.
I have no idea.
I can't.
I have
I
zero answer for
honestly
you.
I can't believe that. I'm gonna see if I can find some more information on it because that seems like one of the dumbest things I've ever read about a Formula One team to turn down. I can't logically think of a reason why you would turn down people that have proven success on the media side. Not to mention that, like, doesn't Ryan Reynolds have like alcohol brands? Like, my phone is a Mint Mobile phone. Like, that's a Ryan Reynolds thing. Like,
Aviation
He's
Gin,
got
which is a
Aviation Gin.
distillery in Portland that he really fell in love with I forgot what their specific, might have been the gin. But to your point, not only is he the
all of
type
those are
investor-
sponsors.
Yeah. He's the type of investor that really puts his money where his mouth is. He will always go above and beyond in terms of advertising and using his own star power to propel that brand forward. And I can't think of anything that he has touched that has turned to anything other than gold.
Yeah, because Wrexham is sponsored or was sponsored at some level by Aviation Gin and Mint Mobile. Like, all of that stuff is tied into his portfolio, so to speak, which just makes it's like the reason why we obviously know that Alpine had the Deadpool Marvel partnership because of Ryan Reynolds and his connection to those movies. It seems so crazy. Like, this feels like
Brand negligence is how
Yeah.
I would describe it.
yeah, this feels like I forget the owner of the A's, but like, what's his name from the A's? I'm drawing a blank right now. No, Oakland A's, like the owner who basically is just like trying to drive the team out of Oakland because he like doesn't care about the sport, just cares about the profits, and he's like, oh, it'll be more profitable if we move to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But like, that happens all the time in sports, and I think it's insane that we don't have some sort of, at least with Formula One, it feels like there's kind of a governing body that could say, hey, this guy has like shown up to be shitty most of the time. Maybe we need to reconsider and force the hand of whomever. I don't know how you would do that, but anyway, that's
strong leadership of baseball commissioners Bud Selig and what was it, Manfred? Yeah, those guys have been.
Yeah, man, that's such a frustrating
I'm not
situation.
even a baseball guy, and I hate those guys. But anyway,
Yeah.
Let's end on a happier note.
Lando can't start a race to save his life? Is that what we're gonna? No.
To the victor go the spoils, and since your guy won, go ahead, Todd. Talk about it.
No, I have nothing more to say than that. We were joking about it in the Discord. I actually said it, I think, last night in the Discord that he'll be out of P1 by turn 1, and it turned out to be even less than that. So,
but he has to do that for that last lap Lando name to hold true. So I get it. He is a professional wrestling fan. He's making it as dramatic as possible. He's trying to make the childhood dream into a manhood reality. So kudos to you, Landiferous.
I mean, yeah, if you're winning by 20 plus seconds, I guess like we can overlook the fact that you can't keep your tires on the ground for a start ever. But he did seem to spin out a decent amount. Not spin out. He did seem to spin the tires a decent amount this week, where like I think sometimes he just is lackadaisical and like, oh, I should have moved over, or I should have like cut that, not cut off, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I should have been smarter about my angle here.
elbows out, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say he's lackadaisical or lethargic?
Yeah. L cubed.
L cubed. Or he's also got a lead foot. He's really. Listeners, come up with your favorite adjective that starts with the letter L to pair with Lando's name, so you can also join the alliterative bunch that is the Exhaust Notes podcast.
Exactly. All right. Before we get out of here, what do we got next week, Todd?
Isn't it the
Monza?
Temple? Yeah.
Italy. Yeah. Predictions. I'm going to go with L cubed. Lando.
For all three positions. So you're saying Max can get
Lando
the fastest
wins.
lap.
Lando gets fast slap. Lando breaks another trophy.
Wait, did he break another one?
No.
Oh. It's like I missed that.
The trophies were sick though for Zandvoort.
Yeah,
Did
they
you
look
see
cool.
them?
Yeah,
They were dope. Predictions. Lando, Max, Chuck. No, they're not. No, Ferrari's not very fast in a straight line. Okay, wild one. Lando, Max, Albon.
Bond.
They're
Some
super
people
fast.
definitely been listening to the back catalog because my hot take for next year was that both Albon and Sainz were going to get a podium, but the Papaya Prince looks to one up me once again in my life. I was going to go with Max, Lando, Oscar.
Max, Lando. Okay. My serious one would be I'm going Lando, Oscar, and Max. There it is.
So Max is the stuffed filling in the Oreo papaya sandwich.
Orange cream Oreo.
Yeah, but then think about it. Max is also Dutch, so it's like a triple orange Oreo. Like you have the papaya.
Stroopwafel.
Stroopwafel.
Yes.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for listening, tuning
I don't
in,
know where we're at.
watching this episode. We're off the rails as we always are. Hopefully you enjoyed this. You can find us at exhaustnotes.fm. More importantly, these guys are going to tell you where they are on social between the races.
You can find me between the sheets on OnlyFans. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't going to do that. You can find me on Instagram at Roheezy, on Twitter at RoadM13. May have got those backwards. Only one way to find out, listener. Look me up. Tell me how I suck at this podcast. And guess what? You'll never replace me. Speaking of replacements, Todd, what's going on?
I'm getting replaced. Jesus. You can find me sometimes on Instagram and Threads at dadshoe.jpg, on Twitter at dadshoe_jpg. Most importantly, join the Discord. Come scream into the void with us.
Exactly. You can find me at Nick Engvall everywhere. Exhaust Notes FM everywhere, and Exhaust Notes FM to find links to all the podcast platforms. And you can find the clips on YouTube or on Instagram. Thanks for rocking with us. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Radio ready, roll.